Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Kate. I'm so glad to have you with me tonight, especially because we're talking to a wonderful man, a wonderful member of St. James, and that's Jose Zambrana. Welcome, Jose.
Hello, and hello, Mother Kate, and everyone, the community, and others who are dialing in this evening.
I'm so glad you're here. And oops, I'm so sorry. I got to turn off that. Jose is not totally crazy about being interviewed. So he's doing this as a gesture of love, I think, for all of us at St. James, because he knows that we want to hear about him. But this isn't your favorite thing to do, is it?
Yeah, I guess I do have a shy side. On the Myers-Briggs, I'm a pretty strong introvert, and
Okay.
So a little nervous. But when you made the invitation, the spirit prods and says, "Go ahead."
Yay, that's right. That's right. And I have such happy memories. You're one of the first people that I got to talk to when I was interviewing here first at St. James. And so I always I associate you with, sort of St. James. So you're the quintessential St. Jameser. So I'm really, I've always had this really, really strong sense of your spiritual compass and how spirit guided you are. So I'm really going to frame a lot of my questions tonight to you in terms of your spiritual journey, but also just your basic life journey. For instance, to get started, where were you born?
Sure. I was born in Long Island Jewish Hospital in Flushing or Queens, New York. And I'm a New Yorker. My grandparents all came over from Puerto Rico to New York City after World War II. And my parents were born in New York City and grew up in New York City. And I was born there. And my sister, who's about 2.5 years younger than I am. And then we moved upstate New York to the country. So I actually really grew up in a small town. But after, yeah.
Well, which small town? There's going to be somebody listening.
Sure, it's called Warwick, New York. It's in Orange County. It's about an hour's drive northwest of New York City. But my dad would still commute every day to New York City for his job. It was a good pay and so forth. So he was really, my parents wanted to have a good environment to raise their kids. And I think we had a chance to connect with the land and so forth.
But do you consider yourself deep down a New Yorker?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I have, and after college, I went back to New York City to go to grad school, and then I ended up playing the organ there and living there for 11 years before I moved to Washington, D.C. and then to L.A. And I was one of those New Yorkers that was like, oh, L.A., why would anyone go there? And I tell you, now that I'm here, I never want to go back. I'm an Angelino now, and I'm happy.
Yeah, I'm right with you. Right with you. There's just a lot of really negative propaganda about the West Coast on the East Coast, and we buy it, right? And then we come here and find out that we were dead wrong.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. So so you were in New York for grad school, and then and for some years after that working, it sounds like. And what is and what's your pardon, what did you say?
I was just going to say, I'd gone back to New York City actually to go to med school. And not many people know
Really?
that. Yeah, but I was in medical school for all of 4 months before I realized I'd made the worst decision of my life. And
wait, stop there, because that's really interesting. What was it about med school that didn't match up?
Yeah, I was told that you had to be empathetic, but I am empathetic, and I realized it would be better if I wasn't. And I couldn't handle that. And it was really weird. It was a difficult time in my life. I was on a full scholarship too. So to sort of give that up was a big deal. And also coming to terms with who I was as a person. And kind of launched into this period of the unknown. And it was a little Episcopal church on the Upper East Side, Church of the Epiphany, where I ended up playing the organ that was a refuge for me to just figure things out.
That's wonderful. So you played organ there, but it was also a place where you worshiped and felt. Oh, that's great. I'm so glad that the Episcopal Church was there. Was that the beginning of your life as an Episcopalian?
Officially, yeah. I was confirmed there.
Very
although
official.
I've been, a Christian all my life, but yeah, I went through a confirmation, and but my journey with the Episcopal Church started in college. I went to a Wesleyan college in Western New York, and my organ teacher took me to the cathedral in Buffalo on a Sunday evening for evensong. And I had no idea what it was about. And I remember going, I'll never forget, and I was listening, and I thought, this is it. This is what I've been looking for my whole life. Here it is. And they were singing evensong and the beautiful organ, and the choir was singing an arrangement of Steal Away, the African American spiritual.
Ooh, yes.
By Dale Edelman, who's amazing, and a little plug for Jim to have that song at St. James. And I just started crying softly in the back as I listened, and I said, I don't know, there was something about the stained glass and the beauty, and I felt at home. And
our school children at St. James School, the choir, they do an amazing version of Steal Away.
I want to hear.
So we'll have to. Yeah, I know you. I bet you do. Yeah, I love that too. It's magnificent. So you had one of those moments, really an epiphany. That I mean, you were always a person of faith, and I know your parents are deeply faithful people. So it wasn't about faith, was it? It was about expression, maybe.
It was. I think in part expression. I think the faith has been passed on to me from my parents. They sort of were really strong early on and brought me and my sister to church. And we grew up in the Baptist church, and we went 3 times a week, and I played the piano, and I went to a Christian high school and learned theology and Christian college. So this was kind of all my life, but
yeah,
I wasn't finding the thing that was speaking to my heart. And I tried a lot of different things. I went to Presbyterian churches, Wesleyan churches, Pentecostal churches. I went to Taizé in France. I went to Iona in Scotland. I was trying to find it.
A true searcher.
And it
seeker,
was
seeker.
That's the seeker, word. Right. And there was something, I've been thinking about it today, about the Episcopal Church balances the transcendence of God with the imminence of God. And I grew up with a lot of imminence, like, do you feel Jesus?
God's your friend, God's here,
Yes, and I needed the transcendence. And
the
then,
mystery,
exactly.
the mystery,
yes.
And the music,
it does
yeah.
Right. But then it was the Eucharist that then made me realize that was the imminence I needed. Like, because, Jesus is with us in the body and blood, or at least I believe, and it's there every week, whether I feel it or not, it's there, it's objective. And so having that balance between those two things and a reverence for good music was really, and finally, a church that, accepted me as a gay man, and that became an important criteria as I started to grow older, that I needed to feel like I could be me in church.
All those things. The music in the Baptist church is music of eminence more than transcendence, maybe?
Yes.
Would you say that?
I believe.
To use your, yeah. My own time spent living with evangelicals in Korea, evangelical Americans in Korea. I agree that there's the eminence part. Man, they've got it down, and it's so powerful, it's so potent, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. and this other world that you discovered. I love it. And so you were playing organ in New York City at the Church of the Epiphany.
I was, yeah. And it's one of those things, it's kind of, people will laugh, but I literally walked in, they needed an organist. I said, hey, I play. And I said, come by, play as a hymn. I did, and they said, okay, you're our organist.
So did you literally meet the Episcopal musical repertoire?
Yes, it was I had to learn it really, really fast.
Really fast. Oh my
but,
goodness.
You know, New York City was a good place to do that. And, you know, I learned by going to different Episcopal churches and seeing what they do and what organists do and how do they play. And it was really great. And, you know, different churches in that city have meaning to me. St. Bartholomew's, I ended up having a relationship with them and doing the Alpha course there and playing music. And then they had a Sunday evening service, Come As You Are, and playing the piano in a band. But I got to play the organ for one hymn every week, and that was amazing.
Do they have a nice organ at St. Bart's?
Right, St. Bart's, I know, I can't believe it. And then
did you know that Father John comes to us from St. Bart's?
Really? And I think Jim was good friends with Bill Trafka, who was the music director here before.
Yes.
So,
there must be some sort of synchronicity between. So it seems like these years in New York were really important years.
They were. It was. I finally figured out that I wanted to study chemistry, and I ended up doing my PhD at City University. And I met Ed, my current husband, and I figured
your current
out,
husband. He's the only husband you've ever
he's
had.
my only husband.
Don't make it sound like you've had all these husbands.
I'm sure he's laughing at me right now. Ed, my husband.
Your husband.
And, it was a good place to figure things out, and I found a community of people who were there to support me and grow and just deal with life, and that sort of launched me into figuring out my career, which was I wanted to be a public servant. So
So from medical school to a PhD in chemistry, and as you were getting that PhD in chemistry, was your identity as a public servant forming at that time?
It was. I was trying to figure out, do I want to teach, do research? And I wanted to make science relevant for society. And I think I wanted to be a doctor because I wanted to do something good. And I realized that science can be good for many things. And so I finally figured that out. And I realized that being a public servant and serving the people of this country was something that worked for me. It had a mission, and it was applying science to something meaningful. So that's when I went to DC to launch that.
So you went to DC to launch that, and where did you end up working in DC?
Yeah, so
Oh, you're getting by the way, in the chat, Ed McCarthy says, current husband, what?
I'm in trouble tonight, folks. So,
and Tom Mueller mentions, and Tom Mueller's also on the chat, and he says, I didn't realize you were at Epiphany. Maybe he has an Epiphany.
Oh, we'll have to talk about that. Yeah, amazing.
I know. Anyway, but you got to DC.
Yeah, I got to DC, and I was hired by the Environmental Protection Agency, which is what I work for, with the Office of Research and Development, the research arm. And I found other church. I attended St. Paul's K Street. High Church, Episcopal Church.
Oh, and I've been there. Yeah.
And but I ended up doing music at the Lutheran Church, at Luther Place Memorial Church, and I started in their band, and then I was their music director, and that was really formative for me because the pastor and I worked together to build diversity in the church and integrate. And that was an experience to work on that issue together. but
Through
extremely
music, through music in particular.
yeah, through music. And the church was looking to make its sort of social mission real and ensure that all peoples were welcome, of all colors, and participating in the worship, and trying to sort of crack that egg gently so that people could participate. And so that was a big learning experience. And
it sounds like a big job to have at the church and also have a full-time job at the
I was very busy. I was very, very busy. And then Ed actually came out here to LA and to start his career in the industry in TV. And so we were figuring that out, and we were apart for 2.5 years just because of the distance and figuring that out before I got a transfer. So it was a busy time, but it was important work, and I learned so much. And actually,
what was one takeaway for you, just one, in your church, Lutheran church work, this diversity project in a way? What was one thing that you learned from that?
I learned that I no longer wanted to go to a church that was only one color. So I wanted to be part of a church that was more reflective of the kingdom of God and of the people. And so that was the criteria when I came to LA. I said, I can't go to a church that's all one thing.
Yeah.
And when I found St. James and found our diversity there, I was like, wow, it's like a unicorn. It's like a miracle. A diverse church.
It is a miracle, isn't it?
Yes.
So many people talk about that when they come to St. James, that it feels like the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you sort of, sounds like you sort of reached your limit with intractable social settings, maybe?
I think so. And they say that, was it Sunday morning is the most segregated in America? And my experience pushed me to be part of the change and to hear the call of Christ, I guess, to, we got to all come together and welcome everyone and engage everyone in leadership and in every part of it. And that's where the Spirit works wonders, when we're open to that, even if it feels at first uncomfortable, or that's where the work of the Spirit's at.
You've been on the vestry, and I feel that way about our vestry, that same thing. It's very diverse, all different kinds of energy and perspectives, so many different perspectives. So every conversation is complicated and rich, there's no easy button for this work. It's the wonderful thing about it is, I think, in a way, how complicated it is, because everybody's having to learn about everybody else, Yeah,
it is. But I think when you see it in action, and when it changes you, and I think it propels ministry. I really believe that, and I've experienced that, and I've experienced that at St. James, and that is, I think, the fabric of who we are, and we are a model, I believe, for other churches.
So you came to St. James for the diversity, and then you met that organ, right?
Well, there's a few criteria. The diversity was a must. I was hoping to find a place with a great organ. I know, it checked all the boxes. But not only a great organ, but great organists. Jim, Tom, just amazing talent, and the choir, and a liturgy that is meaningful and sensuous in the best use of that term, and has the balance between the imminence and the Transcendence. And as I said, it's like a unicorn, and a beautiful space, an amazing rector and priests who preach the word of God and challenge us to listen to the Spirit and to figure out how to be in mission together in this city and in this world.
And it's always changing. It's not a static process, is it?
It's not a static process. And we always have to grow. And I forgot to mention, the other thing was, I wanted a place where I felt like I could bring Ed. He's not particularly religious, but spiritual, and I wanted to be able to bring him to church and feel comfortable with that he'd feel comfortable, that we would feel comfortable. And that has become really important to me.
I can't imagine what it would be like to try to worship in a place where you didn't feel like you were accepted for being who you are. I don't know how that would be possible.
Yeah. Oof, that's a deep one, Mother Kate.
I know. But I know you do get Ed to church sometimes, because I know that I blessed you all on your, was it 3rd anniversary?
Yeah, we're almost there. Yeah, yes, 3rd anniversary. He's probably
with your current husband.
Yes, my current husband. Yes, 3 years, almost 4.
Yeah, so we do get to see him sometimes, and it's always a treat. He's a very talented television writer.
Yep. He's a special.
So he is a special guy and funny. But let's get back to the EPA for a minute, because you got reassigned to LA, which is great, so you all could be together. And what does the EPA have you doing here? Yeah,
so I do all sorts of things. They sometimes call high-profile projects, or I sort of help manage our research. And so whatever they need, I kind of do. And we've done interesting research projects from hydraulic fracturing, very high-profile issue. We're doing one on recycled tire crumb, which is turf fields. And then I sort of got into the area of working with state people and with tribes. And so tribes is a big part of my focus now, and the First Nations here in this land, and working directly in collaboration with tribal nations.
In what kind of way? And what sort of work do you do with the tribes?
And so
maybe just an example of one kind of thing. Just
we dialogue, because tribes have sort of nations, their own government, own lands, can manage the environment on their own lands. And so we want to support tribes. But we need to be in conversation, because the way we do Western science is sometimes different from the way tribes view the world and the holistic, integrated nature of the world. And Western science doesn't always see that. And so I work at a space where we dialogue about how indigenous frameworks of knowledge can match with Western scientific sort of ways of knowledge. And how do these things work, as my colleagues say, in parallel, like two canoes? So that's what we do.
So then, can you give me an example of an issue or a topic that the two canoes would have to be communicating about?
Sure. So we might work, for example, on salmon, like making sure the environment is safe for salmon. And you think of salmon, you probably think of food, and which is important. We want the salmon to be healthy, so when we eat them, we're healthy. But we tend to look at the salmon for, like, what can the salmon do for me today, right? Get it on my plate. When I work with the tribes, they also focus on what is the destiny of the salmon, regardless of me or of us. What is the salmon's purpose, just being in the universe? And that's a different perspective, because it's not just about what can it do for me, but how do we make sure our world is safe and the environment is safe for the salmon to just be a salmon.
That's lovely. You know, it strikes me that incredible empathy of yours that wasn't an immediate fit with med school is really coming into play here, because I can imagine that you're really good at communicating across these different these two lines. You're bilingual in this way, right? Because you're able to, I think, empathize with a whole different worldview.
Yeah, and that's part of like trying to listen to others. And that's a lot of what we do is listen. And then I try to work, as what you're saying, Mother Kate, on trying to translate that, be a science translator. And but it's in that sort of listening that we're open to learning and seeing something new.
Do you feel an awareness of your faith life when you're doing that work?
When I work with the tribes, I feel it more than any other time I do work.
Really? So that if you open that channel in yourself, you're able to sort of...
Yeah. When we start our meetings, the tribes open with some kind of prayer or blessing. Sometimes it's Christian, sometimes it's not. It's just the indigenous religion. And it's weird, like being in government, like it's the only time, at least for my job, where I get to pray officially, or listen to the prayer. So when you hear tribes and tribal people, and they bring you to another world, another place. And I feel so honored and so humbled. It's just humbling work. And
so are they imminence or transcendence or both? How do you track that with them?
Yeah, gosh, it's an amazing balance. I sort of see it all in one. And the Puerto Rican people actually have indigenous blood. The Taino people were indigenous to the Caribbean islands when Columbus showed up. And so there's even that connection in my own heritage. And so I think...
Do you ever feel when they're praying or speaking, do you feel a chord inside of you that sort of that affinity almost?
I do. And I feel humbled because I'm listening and learning in a way in which I think we all can learn. We all can learn and need to learn from that historical knowledge, that ancient knowledge that's there, and that is connected to something beyond ourselves and to the earth. And yeah.
It seems that the whole focus of that spirituality is balance too, isn't it?
I believe so. I've experienced that, yeah.
So how lucky are the indigenous peoples to have an EPA official who can communicate in this way, the way that you do? I think that's wonderful. What tribes, by the way, can you give us some examples of, just so I can get the feel of it?
Yeah, I work with the council, and so it's national. So we have a tribe from every part of the world. There's actually 574 federally recognized tribes and Alaska Native villages.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
okay. All the tribes.
Yeah.
When you say the tribes, you mean the tribes.
Yeah. And out here in the West, a lot of the land is tribal land.
Yes. My sister lives up near the Sierra Nevada mountains, and she lives right up next to a reservation with tribal land. So, hey, your dad and mom are on the chat too. And they just say hi. We're so proud of you. Great job. But we're not finished yet. So you made this journey to LA. You're doing this really interesting work with the EPA. You found this church that ticked all the boxes, you got married, and I can tease you that you are what I call a liturgy nerd, because I wasn't here for your wedding. It was before my time, but I know that it was perfect and that there was lots of music, right?
There was, and thanks to Jim and Bishop Catherine at the time for being open. And it's weird because growing up and being in the world that I was, I never thought I'd get married. Like, that wasn't in the cards. And then when things changed in this country and so forth, and with Ed, and then it was in the cards, and I was like, oh wow, getting married and having a church service. And I think I wanted something that reflected some connections with me and my faith and with my own journey. So, and something that demonstrated a connection between a same-sex marriage, but also a rich connection to music and liturgy. And so Jim was wonderful. We sat down, we chose chants, and we chose amazing music, and he played Bach and the choir sang, and it was a dream that I didn't really have, but then had come true. And I have to give another shout out to Jim that I asked him to play an arrangement of Superman on the way out. So to try to lighten it up and make a connection.
I cannot believe.
So
that shows you how much he cares for you, because that doesn't sound like something. But what was Superman aside, what was your favorite thing that you did musically in the wedding?
Oh my Lord, so many good things. There's a piece by Gabriel Jackson and called I Gaze Upon You. And it's a secular text, so it's not often sung in church. But Gabriel Jackson is an amazing composer. And yeah, it's a piece that's just stunning. And yeah, it brings me to tears. I can't think about it too much because I'll cry.
Well, I know there's a video. I need to see the video someday so that I can enjoy all the music too. But you know, one thing that you said just now really strikes me too, and that is sometimes I think the best experiences are those things that happen in our lives that we didn't even dare dream of, you know? Right. And then you find yourself in the midst of it, and it's just feels like such a miracle, a beautiful miracle, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that, you know, sometimes the things that we have very strong expectations for, sometimes those expectations can get in the way almost, but it's just pure joy when something you didn't even dream of happens. Right. You know, that's what I think anyway. So here's one thing that you didn't dream of happening that wasn't so good. And that was about a year or so ago, I think you were diagnosed with cancer.
I was. And give me 2 seconds. I'm going to close my blinds. The sun is setting in my eyes.
That's right. It's very film noir right now. And apologies to listeners at home. I have 2 dogs now instead of 1, and they're playing with a squeaky ball. So sorry. Oh, you know what? Your friend Cindy's in the chat, and she said, a most beautiful, inspirational wedding in a most wonderful space. Thank you, St. James. So she was there, huh?
Yeah, she was my, I don't know what you call it, best person.
She's a great person.
Yeah. And Cindy has been a friend for many years, and we go to church together and find church experiences together. And so, you know, that's something we share. And she's often at St. James as well. So,
yeah.
So
yeah. Let's talk about that. I mean, we don't have to talk about the nitty gritty of your cancer, but I will say that your life. I mean, you're a young man. We did not see this coming.
Yeah, I did not. In October 2018, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and 2 days before my 45th birthday. And I'd been misdiagnosed before, and you know, it's not something that happens to people my age very, very often. And so it was a great shock. And because of that, it wasn't a great situation, and my life was upended. And I think I was thinking about this week, you know, we talk about this topic, and I'm a pretty private person. And,
I know.
But I realized that maybe if I share something for someone else, it might help, because what you realize is that so many people go through this. It's something we live with right now in the 21st century, in terms of the percentage of people, in terms of who get some cancer diagnosis at some point in their life is pretty high.
So high.
Yeah. So
it's not a club that you'd like to belong to, but
it's not. Yeah. And you know, you feel like, yeah, so all those things. And I was really fortunate for many reasons. One is I realized I had a community of people I could reach out to, and that was not my first instinct, but I realized I needed to. And the vestry at St. James was, I remember thinking, I can talk to these people. And my EFM group at St. James was the second group. And I remember talking with the vestry and everyone praying and us holding hands and feeling like I could talk to my church and my priest about it was incredible. And and also that, you know, I felt hard on myself because I felt like my faith faltered all the time during this process. But the faith of my parents, my family, Cindy, my husband, my church, my community has carried me.
So there was faith to go around, it sounds like, when yours was on a low ebb.
It was on a,
well, I mean, it's just so physically exhausting, right?
Yeah, it is, and emotionally exhausting. And, you know, and I think so many people go through this, and my instinct was I'll just suffer in silence, and I'm embarrassed, and I feel bad, and blah, blah, blah. And making those few connections were lifesavers. And it led to other people at St. James who have been through this journey being willing to talk with me, and just people praying for me. And it makes a difference. It makes a difference every single week.
So, you know, one thing that you're saying right now, which I think is probably going to be really helpful to people who experience serious illnesses, even this guy, who we all think of as so faithful, even your faith faltered, Mother Teresa's faith faltered, you know, it's a part of the journey. What did that feel like for you?
Oh gosh, yeah. I felt like God was so disappointed in me. I thought, oh, I don't know, all of this, and here, I used to talk about healing stuff, and I thought, oh my goodness, what was all that for if I can't even have a little faith for myself? And but that was something I needed to grow in realizing that our faith is not something we have alone. It is something we share. And
I wish that we could say that 100 times so that everybody could take that in.
Yeah.
Because isn't it funny how our default is to just try to depend on our...
It is. And yeah, that's all I can just say is that everyone else seemed to carry that faith for me. And that was humbling. But yeah, and so my prayers for others when they face whatever they have to face, whatever it is, and whatever the doctors are telling you, you know, the community is there to be a support through it. And I don't think I could have said that, but now I can.
You might have said it theoretically before, but I think it was my observation too, that it's a big help to have parents as extraordinary as your parents.
They're pretty special, yes.
Just people of great faith. And I could sense that they were really accompanying you during that hard time.
They were. They were on the journey, you know, and I feel blessed. Not everyone has that. But you know, whether or not you have parents who are loving and faithful, there are people out there in your community, if you have to form your own family.
Oh yeah.
Who are that?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, a fairly new friend here at St. James named Carl, he says in the chat, we do not have our faith alone. It is something we share. There is probably no other way to do faith. Thank you. He was quoting you there. Yeah, I know. That is amazing learning. And can I just say how film and television gives us such an unrealistic picture of what it's like to have cancer, you know, that it's all epiphanies all the time. And it's really a slog, isn't it? A lot
It
of the
is,
time.
yeah. It's like a day-to-day process. And yeah, you know, yeah, it's a day-to-day, and everyone experiences a little differently, but it's not what they say in the movies. And maybe Ed will help with that, you know, one day. But you know, and I'm still in treatment, but things are going well, and by the grace of God. And you know, I just have to say that that first weekend where, you know, you hear it and you don't know what's going on and this and that. I was actually in Palm Springs for my birthday weekend. I was my happy birthday. And
wow.
yeah, and I went to the Episcopal church out there, St. Paul's in the Desert, that Sunday morning, which was happened to be my birthday, and Ed and my friend Cindy and another friend went with me. And they had a thing where they call people up, like, you know, kind of like we do, for blessings and also for healing prayer. And I have to say that I believe that made a difference that day. That healing prayer that I got at that Episcopal church made a difference.
That's wonderful. You know, I'm loving the story of your life is punctuated by these moments in Episcopal churches where you were really, really where the church has reached you in a time and in a way that was crucial, it sounds like.
Yeah. And that's, isn't that what church is about? You know?
Well, I would hope so, but it's really great to hear. You know how it is. So sometimes churches just do church.
Right.
I mean, like as if it's just a custom or it's just what we do, you know. So that's why I wanted to talk to you, because of your lived faith in the Episcopal tradition, you know, and also the rich heritage of faith that you came with, you know, and then fascinating hearing about your faithful connections with the tribes and how that folds into your work as you communicate across canoes. You know, it's so interesting. Now, I guess I want to get this amazing perspective of yours, sort of trained on St. James as we enter this period of our history. If church always has to be adapting and growing, it has to be generative, or else it's dying. What do you make of our present moment, and what is your greatest dream for St. James in the future?
Wow. You know,
so I'm asking you to be our prophet right now. Be a
prophet. Oh, you know, that's my gift, but I can try. I'll channel my dad, who's a prophet, and my friend Cindy, who's a prophet.
She's a healer. I've been meaning to talk to her.
Yes.
I need to find out more about her healing work.
Yes. Right. Well, and that's one of the things I was thinking of today, Mother Kate, was St. James growing into also being a healing space. And we have a prayer ministry, we have the blessing, but maybe we can be more direct and sort of discerning that in our community. So that's something I've been thinking about. And
that's great. A dedicated healing ministry.
I don't know what it is. We discern it as a community. You know, some churches just like have a priest anoint with oil in the chapel after service. And maybe that's something that would work for us. I don't know, but maybe there's a space for that, because healing is not just about the body, but about the mind and the soul. And I think that our community has the bones and the commitment and the engagement and the spirit working to grow into that.
I love it. I love it. That sounds like a prophecy to me. And I hope other people are listening to that that too. And I think especially, I mean, interesting that you were choosing this word and this theme of healing when we're in the midst of a global pandemic and people are, so many people are ill, they're afraid of being ill. Mental illness is on the rise in this very challenging time. And there's so many ways that community is interrupted or is having to be reconstituted in another form. So it seems like just the time to begin to think about healing in a new way.
I like that, Mother Kate. Yes, because a lot of Jesus's ministry, they say he talked about money, he talked about healing, and he did it. And I'm not saying I'm just saying he talked about a community and coming together and inviting the Spirit to bring whatever that might mean, of mind, body, and soul. And we leave it up to the Spirit to figure that out. And so maybe as we walk more in the steps of Christ these days, we can listen to Christ's example and in that.
There's the gospel reading for this coming weekend for Matthew is that one where Jesus is he's just heard about John the Baptist being killed, and he goes in a boat by himself. He just wants time alone, but all the crowds follow him, and he sees them, and he has compassion, and he starts healing, and I just think about how we look right now and the call to compassion and the need for healing.
And that I think that compassion starts with one to the other, and that's what I felt with the members of St. James when I went through my health situation. A member showed up at my hospital bed. You came to my home. It's that compassion, that empathy, and that we have one to another that I think grows out into a community in need.
Yes, and again that get to in your life that theme of empathy and finding it in your faith life and finding it in your work life and now experiencing it from others during your illness, and now it feels like a call to what's happening for us next as a church. So I'm very excited about how that will play out. I really do think you and Cindy and I need to have a Zoom conversation soon.
Oh, the Spirit's working. Well, and others too, because I know there are others in our community who feel this calling. And we can, I love how St. James figures things out together, and you help us, Mother Kate, even if it's selling a rectory or whatever, you help us do it together, and that is a patient process, but I tell you, it's the way to go. So.
Yeah. It's I think if you really want to get somewhere, you have to go together, right? Somewhere. Yeah. Well, I think it was a very lucky day when you came to St. James, because I know that you've had an impact on so many people. You mentioned EFM earlier. That's Education for Ministry. It's a sort of a deep scripture and theology study group that meets over a period of how many years?
Yeah, it's a 4-year program.
4-year program. This is not for lightweights. This is for people who want to make a commitment. And you become a house church, really.
It is. You're exactly right. That's a best metaphor for that. And my EFM people are like my extended family. And I have to recommend it to those who want to sort of dig deeper and with people and go on a journey of learning and about scripture with new eyes and history with new eyes.
And theology and What's the other? There's one other theme, major
Yeah,
theme.
it's Old Testament, New Testament, church history, and theology. So.
That's it. Oh yeah, that's great. No, they say that if you do that 4-year EFM, it's like going to seminary.
A lot of reading, a lot of
reading. So, so anyway, I just want to thank you so much for this time tonight, and for, as a private person, being willing to share your story with us. I feel like it's all the more special because it's not easy, you know. But you did a wonderful job of bringing us into your journey. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sage.
You're such a blessing. And oh, your dad's giving us some advice here. I love it. All right, so we've got some. He's already planting seeds, I think, for our healing ministry. I love your dad so much.
Me too.
Anyway, thank you so much, Jose, and give my best to Ed, and take good care of yourself, and blessings on your work with the tribes. And we'll see you on the live stream.
I'll be there. Blessings to everyone. Thank you. Thanks for the honor.
Good night, everyone.